I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Mark Penn, Chairman and CEO of Stagwell Inc. Mark, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I do want to talk about the arms race that has been brewing for a while between Microsoft and Google. Within his first weeks as CEO of Google in 2016, Sundar Pichai said Google would be an AI-first company. Fast forward to today, its top rival Microsoft is seemingly beating them in the AI fight. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that Google seemed to have taken its eye off the ball. I mean, I think the prime directive at Google for a long time seemed to be, well, are we doing Nest? Are we trying new enterprises? Are we making new products? Are we making driverless cars? And I think Microsoft kind of saw an opening here. I think, remember, Satya really was the cloud CEO. And this really is, AI is really an incredible cloud activity. And so it was natural, I think, that Satya would really focus in on AI. And I think Microsoft did get a jump here, right? While I think that Google's strategy was a little less clear. After all, sometimes when you have as large a market share as Google has, you enjoy keeping that market share and you don't want to change things much for consumers because consumers are pretty happy.
Pichai said this to employees: some of our most successful products were not first to market, and, quote, they gained momentum because they solved important user needs and were built on deep technical insights. How much does being first matter?
Well, the funny thing is, and about 7 or 8 years ago, I was chief strategy officer at Microsoft. So it was very funny because Microsoft would always say that we weren't necessarily first. So I think for Google and Microsoft to be not necessarily first, when in fact they at this point should be leading the charge on AI. They have the largest databases of information. They have the best engineering teams in the world. They should be in a pretty good position, to lead this and to develop this. And remember, people attribute to AI a perfection that doesn't exist yet. And so it's really dangerous for people to think, AI's here, they're going to take over, or it's going to take over this or that, or we won't have to write anything anymore. We'll just hand it over to AI. AI is still experimental, and how much we trust AI really turns out to be kind of a critical element in whether AI takes us in some very wrong paths or not.
I do want to dive a little deeper in that. I know when AI was really introduced into the zeitgeist, into the national conversation, the first thing a lot of people were saying was, hey, is that going to take my job? Am I going to be left unemployed? Will this make kids not want to do schoolwork? Will it cause cheating? What do you think AI looks like in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, unfortunately, the answer to most of those questions is yes. AI can really not directly take jobs in the same way that it will reduce the number of person hours that are really required to complete a lot of tasks. So I don't know at what point AI will achieve perfection in a lot of these tasks, but it sure is able to do first drafts of a lot of, we have in fact a product itself that does the first draft of a news release. And so the amount of time that will be saved here will in effect reduce the number of jobs in a lot of professions. I mean, obviously, it's not going to affect people who are, it's not going to affect the police, on the beat, but a lot of office workers, are going to find that AI could either replace or greatly simplify, reducing the number of people that are needed to carry out jobs. It's really the biggest invention of this decade, if you look at it. If you think that DOS was the greatest invention, of its time, followed by Windows, followed by really the iPhone, followed now by AI and the cloud as the major inventions of our time that make huge productivity gains.
That's a huge statement. This is the invention of our time. What exactly do you think makes it that?
Well, because I think people have been looking at technology for a while now. And so what have they been getting? They've been getting faster internet. They've been getting the digitization of all entertainment. right? But they weren't, since the iPhone creation, really getting a new productivity advantage, right? They were getting increasing usage of business software. They were getting increasing automation of routine tasks, but nothing really credible. This is really a leap forward. It's a leap forward because it's taking a series of intellectually based tasks that previously had been beyond the reach of computing capability, and now saying those tasks will either be done completely by computers or will at least be done first draft, right? And you're right. Will students? This will be a big problem for schools. It is a big problem for jobs, and but I go back to the point that AI can also be spectacularly wrong at times, just as people can.
I do now want to go back to the race that currently Microsoft and Google are in. What's more important, being first to release the product or being the better product?
Overall, you've got to be the better product, and you've got to integrate it into use cases that people use. So what is it that AI is going to do for people and for businesses? We're looking at a lot of those use cases now, and which AI is really going to be more effective at doing it. It's got to be cost effective too. AI is not free. It really uses up, 10 or 15 or more times the power that a normal search would utilize, sometimes 100 times more computing power. So we haven't yet figured out, once we have AI, how it's going to be paid for. And so you're going to have a race on quality, you're going to have a race on certain applications, and you're also going to have a race on cost.
Google seems to be coming in second in this race, but Google's so ingrained into our everyday life. I mean, it's a verb. You Google something. Do you see a time where you're going to Bing something? I mean, will Google not be the top search engine in the foreseeable future?
Well, IBM is not the top computing company. Growing up, we thought IBM would be the be all and end all, and then we thought Microsoft would be the be all and end all. So this is a bit of a comeback for Microsoft and a comeback for Bing. Look, because the market shares have been really pretty static. Bing only has share pretty much in the United States. It doesn't really have share, in the rest of the world. So Google has an incredible lead here in terms of what it should do. It has an incredible engineering team. I'd be surprised if the Google response really wasn't strong and wasn't effective. It's interesting, on cloud, Google has not been a leader compared to AWS and Microsoft. But Google can't afford not to be a leader here. If it falls down here, you're right. Market share of search could really start to deteriorate unless it really gets out front of this problem and puts all of its resources into that. I have a lot of confidence in these companies when they do that, but they are behind the eight ball right now.
The Google CEO issued a red alert to its employees, saying it was an all hands on deck situation when it came to their chatbot. Do you foresee them taking over this arms race?
Well, it's going to be a race. The things about races is you can't predict the winner until these things come, and then there will be regulatory concerns here about what AI is permitted to do and what it's not, what the tie-in with search share is or is not. How can we have companies have both monopoly or oligopoly on search and on AI? There'll be a lot of issues here before this race. We're at the very beginning. The first thing is people are trying it. They're amazed by it in the same way I think people were amazed by DOS and Windows and the iPhone. That's what makes it an incredible breakthrough technology. But it's going to take 4 or 5 years here before this race is really won or lost, and before use cases are really deployed, and before I think it's really part of our everyday life, which it will be.
You mentioned AI is not perfect, and we've heard of the cons of AI, including it being racist, biased, and factually inaccurate at times. Is this AI race, do you think, potentially dangerous, or is it good for competition?
Well, it's dangerous in the sense that unless we really put a lot of brakes on AI can be manipulated by users. Originally, the original kind of AI type chatbot Microsoft had maybe 7 or 8 years ago, right, in China, called Tay, which they brought to the US. after an incredibly good experience in China. And in 4 days, it was trained by users to issue racist stuff. And then we've seen so far, the New York Times reporters were able to get the bot to say that it had a secret ambition and it wanted to take somebody away from their wife. So this stuff can go seriously wrong if a lot of guardrails aren't put on it. And I think the companies now are aware of that. Because the other thing here is you could have the best product, or you could have a product that isn't the best, but it doesn't make mistakes. You could look at it in reverse and say, look, it's the whopper mistakes here, or it's going off on kind of AI benders that really will say, hey, I can't use that product. There's a lot of potential danger here.
Do you think that because it is a race of who can get it out to the market the fastest, that these guardrails maybe won't be put into place?
I think that they're learning pretty quickly that they need the guardrails, and I think that's why I think you're going to see, some reconsideration of plans. I don't think, as you said before, that it's about fastest. It is about having a product that works against things that people use or need. And many of the uses are really going to be internal corporate uses. This will help students, it'll help learners, it'll help general office workers as well. But there are going to be a lot of applications here within corporations that will be the bread and butter. So this is as much a B2B product as it is B2C.
Mark, I do now want to transition to politics. It was a huge, monumental week in the political sphere. Former President Donald Trump was arraigned this week, and I want to talk about the political fallout from the historic event. Politically speaking, who are the winners and losers here?
Well, it's really sort of upside down, because Alan Bragg seems like a loser because everyone thinks that this indictment is politically motivated. Except he's, I guess, a winner with people who were in favor of a politically motivated indictment, which is about half the country. And Donald Trump is indicted, but he's a winner because his moribund campaign has been brought back to life. And Ron DeSantis is kind of a loser in this because he was kind of beginning to pick up steam against Trump, and now the race has been frozen. And Joe Biden is just, ducking the best he can to stay out of the story and not answer any questions.
Mark, you've been in politics for years now. Are you surprised at all that this surged Trump's primary run? I mean, he's still the front runner of the 2024 presidential primary for the Republicans, despite being the first former U.S. president in history to be charged with a criminal offense.
Yeah, well, falsifying business records from 7 years ago in a case that, most people ain't exactly it's really an indictment that is backfiring or boomeranging. It's not the kind of serious stuff that, say, President Nixon, had he been charged, would have been charged with incredibly serious, crimes that people would have recognized. So, this is not working it's working in reverse. And I think that we don't know how this is exactly going to play out. We don't know about potential other indictments. But Trump is going to play himself here as the victim. And I think without these indictments, frankly, his chances for nomination were probably lower than his ability now to galvanize a base and to fight back, on this. And so things are working in reverse, unless it was the plan of Democrats to do exactly that, to make Trump the nominee. So this so far is playing out to Trump's advantage, and I don't know whether the Democrats behind it really wanted that to be the case, or they really did want to, put him in jail.
Who do you think Democrats would fare better with as the contender here, Trump or DeSantis? And I say DeSantis because he is number 2 in the polls.
Well, look, I think I've written a few times, I really think the country is looking for neither Trump nor Biden. They're looking for a new generation of leaders. And so I think whichever party has a new generation of leader is frankly going to do better in the end with the swing electorate. Both these other leaders have very strong bases. I think Biden has a strong base within the Democratic Party. I think Trump has a strong base within the Republican Party. Neither has a strong hold on the swing electorate. The swing electorate is saying, I don't want to go back, I want to go forward. And we'll see whether or not Biden in fact turns out to be the nominee and whether Trump in fact turns out to be the nominee. I would say the chances we have a Biden Trump race are probably about 50%, which is a lot higher than I would have said 2 months ago.
It's interesting that you said DeSantis was a loser, but this electorate says, I want to go forward, I don't want to go back. Do you think this could potentially open a lane for DeSantis, who is a Republican, who has very conservative ideals, but is touted as not having the type of baggage that Trump does?
Well, and that's where he's got to run on character and competence. I think DeSantis has been running on conservative values. And if you want to have someone with conservative values and someone who's really, recruited the right, that's Trump. And so consequently, I don't think that DeSantis has really been making as much progress because he's not appealing to the non-Trump voters enough, or the people who are right on the edge of liking Trump. And so we'll see whether or not he changes his campaign strategy. But I think, as DeSantis said, it's like, what does he know about hush money payments to porn stars? And I think that is a reassuring fact. And so voters are going to have to decide whether or not he has a character edge and a competence edge that he can kind of bring before the voters. Because if he's running on conservative values, he's not going to top Trump.
And going back to Trump, he's currently facing 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Do you think that these charges are going to stick?
No, I don't think they're going to stick. I think they're likely to be dismissed because these have been already deemed, and most voters, we did a poll, most voters see these payments as personal payments. They're not campaign payments. And in fact, Edwards, this whole thing was litigated. And you look over at the Hillary Clinton campaign, and they said they disguised the expenses for the Steele dossier as legal expenses. And so what happened to them? Did they get indicted and, thrown with 34 counts of falsifying business or campaign records? No, they paid a $100,000 fine. So I don't see how these charges as felonies 7 years later are really going to stick, although I leave that to the legal experts.
And realistically, is this something that voters truly care about? We've seen record high inflation this year. There's a host of issues that are kitchen table issues, and this isn't one of them. Is this something that's going to carry into the 2024 election?
Well, voters tend to care about what the media covers. And I think that if the media, covers inflation and immigration and energy prices, then that will dominate. And then if the media covers indictments and this is a big issue now. It wasn't a big issue a couple of weeks ago. I don't know whether it will die down. And I think it's unfortunate because I always used to say there was a campaign about the real issues and then a campaign about the campaign, which was really like throwing mud at each other. It's how negative every campaign was. And I think, unfortunately, the voters now are distracted with issues like that, so that they really can't focus on the individuals and the issues, and instead this tearing down of democratic norms here, which, look, Trump did his part to tear down norms. He didn't react in January 6th properly. He didn't gracefully exit the election, after 2020. He didn't exit the White House in the way, so he broke the norms here, and Democrats have broken the norms here. And this Alan Bragg, I think, has taken a step here of, not being, federal officials or even a special counsel, but being a Manhattan DA who promised to bring a case and then brought a case that most people think is this continual breaking down of our norms in order to get political advantage. It's got to stop. And I think that a leader has got to come forward here who's going to say that both sides have been breaking down these norms.
Do you see it stopping anytime soon?
I think we'll see who the candidates really turn out to be for president. I think people always look at the front runners at this time and they say, aha, those are the candidates. But really, it's the unknown and the candidates of potential that often wind up on top. And so you can go back and you can look at how, the race with whether it's Jimmy Carter or lots of these nomination races, or you could look at Barack Obama against Hillary when we started out, with the significant lead as the front runner. Front runners is a dangerous place to be in a presidential primary at this part of the cycle, because they're the ones that they tear down and criticize.
Well, let's look into the future a little bit. Trump's next in-person hearing is December 4th, which is 2 months from the Iowa caucus. He's the front runner now. You said that's a dangerous place to be. Do you foresee him being the front runner then? And will that next hearing inject, that energy back into his campaign to keep him going?
Well, a lot of things will or will not happen between now and December. If DeSantis and Tim Scott and a couple of significant candidates like that get in the race, then there are going to be presidential debates in the fall, and I think they're going to be highly watched, and they will really, I think, probably be the key events in determining whether Trump is the front runner or not come December. And then these charges may or may not be dismissed before December, depending upon what happens with the motions. And there may or may not be additional charges from the other two jurisdictions, Georgia and the special counsel. So we could even have a bigger circus or not here in terms of what comes out. So there's a lot of imponderables, right? If I gave you what's the probability he'll still be the front runner? I would again put it at probably around 50%. The biggest variable being who gets in the race and who wins those debates. Trump has done pretty well in these debates in the past, but this is a different time, and I think these could be some very capable candidates here. It could be a real race.
Well, as the AI race and the presidential race all unfold, I hope you come on back and join us and provide your insights. Mark Penn, thank you so much.
Thank you.